Victoria Hayes pressed her hand against the rain-streaked window of her small bedroom, watching the November storm batter the sprawling Dalton estate. 3 years had passed since she first walked through those massive oak doors, nervously clutching her resume and hoping for a chance. Now this mansion felt more like home than anywhere she had ever lived. The sound of small footsteps broke her reverie. Lily Dalton appeared in the doorway, her blonde curls tangled from sleep, clutching her worn stuffed rabbit. The little girl rubbed her eyes and patted across the hardwood floor. "Another nightmare, sweetheart." Victoria knelt down, opening her arms. Lily rushed into them, burying her face against Victoria's shoulder. "I dreamed about Mommy again," Lily whispered. "She was calling me, but I couldn't reach her." Victoria's heart ached. Christopher's wife, Amanda, had passed away 4 years ago from an unexpected illness. Lily had been only 2 years old, barely old enough to form lasting memories. Yet the loss colored everything in the child's world. "Your mommy loved you so much," Victoria said softly, carrying Lily back to her princess-themed bedroom. "She's watching over you, keeping you safe." "Do you think she knows about you?" Lily asked as Victoria tucked her back into bed. "Do you think she's happy that you take care of me?" The question caught Victoria off guard. "I hope so. I think any mother would be grateful that someone loves her daughter. You do love me, right?" Lily's blue eyes searched Victoria's face with an intensity that seemed far too mature for 6 years old. "More than you could possibly know," Victoria assured her, kissing her forehead. "Now sleep, little one. Tomorrow, we're making those chocolate chip cookies you love." After Lily drifted off, Victoria returned to her room, but found sleep impossible. Her mind kept wandering to Christopher, as it often did during these quiet hours. She had tried so hard to maintain professional distance, to see him only as her employer. But somewhere along the way, her heart had betrayed her. Christopher Dalton was nothing like the cold, distant businessman she had expected. Yes, he worked long hours building his tech company, and yes, he sometimes got lost in spreadsheets and conference calls. But Victoria had witnessed moments that revealed his true character. The way he read bedtime stories to Lily with different voices for each character. How he remembered the names of every staff member and asked about their families. The sadness that flickered across his face when he thought no one was watching. Morning arrived with pale sunlight filtering through the clouds. Victoria showered and dressed in her usual attire, simple jeans and a soft sweater. She styled her auburn hair in a practical ponytail and headed downstairs to prepare Lily's breakfast. Margaret, the head housekeeper who had worked for the Daltons for 20 years, was already in the kitchen arranging fresh flowers. The older woman had taken Victoria under her wing from day one, teaching her the household rhythms and sharing stories about the family. "You look tired." "Dear," Margaret observed, her kind eyes missing nothing. "Lily had another rough night." "She dreamed about Amanda again," Victoria said, cracking eggs into a bowl. "These storms always seem to trigger her anxiety." Margaret sighed. "That poor child. At least she has you. You've been a blessing to this family, Victoria. I hope you know that." Before Victoria could respond, Christopher entered the kitchen. He wore charcoal gray pants and a crisp white shirt, his dark hair still damp from the shower. Despite the early hour, he looked alert and composed, though Victoria noticed the tension in his shoulders. "Good morning," he said, his deep voice filling the space. "Is Lily awake yet?" "She's getting dressed," Victoria replied, suddenly hyper-aware of his presence. "Breakfast will be ready in 10 minutes. Actually, I need to speak with you both. Could you come to my study after Lily eats? It's important." Victoria's stomach tightened. Had she done something wrong? Was he unhappy with her care of Lily? "Of course, Mr. Dalton," Christopher, he corrected gently, as he had many times before. "We've been through enough together that you can use my first name." He left before she could respond, and Margaret gave her a knowing look. "That man cares about you more than he lets on." "He's my employer," Victoria said firmly, trying to convince herself as much as Margaret. "Nothing more. If you say so, dear." After breakfast, Victoria walked Lily to Christopher's study, her nerves building with each step. The room smelled of leather and old books, masculine and comforting. Christopher stood by the window, hands in his pockets, staring at the garden where the storm had left puddles and scattered leaves. "Daddy, you wanted to see us?" Lily bounced on her toes, ever energetic. Christopher turned, and his expression softened when he looked at his daughter. "Yes, Princess." "I have some news." He paused, and his gaze shifted to Victoria. "I'm taking 2 weeks off work next month. Natasha suggested we all go to the Caribbean, a resort in St. Lucia. She thinks Lily would benefit from some sunshine and beach time." Natasha Sterling. Just hearing the name made Victoria's chest tighten. Christopher had been seeing the socialite for 8 months, though calling it dating seemed generous. Natasha appeared at functions and dinners, but rarely spent time with Lily. Victoria had watched their interactions with growing concern. There was no warmth there, no genuine affection, just two attractive people going through the motions. "Are you coming to Victoria?" Lily grabbed her hand, squeezing tight. "Please say yes. I don't want to go without you." "That's actually why I wanted to speak with you," Christopher said. And something in his tone made Victoria's pulse quicken. "I'd like you to join us." Lily needs consistency, and Natasha isn't comfortable handling childcare responsibilities. Of course she wasn't, Victoria thought, but kept her face neutral. "I appreciate the offer, but I don't want to intrude on your family vacation." "You are family," Lily declared. "You're more family than Natasha." Christopher's voice held a note of warning, but he didn't correct her statement. His eyes met Victoria's, and for a moment, she saw something there that made her breath catch. Longing, perhaps, or regret. "Please come, Victoria. It would mean a lot to both of us." She knew she should decline. Spending 2 weeks watching Christopher with Natasha, pretending her heart didn't break a little more each day, sounded like exquisite torture. But when Lily looked up at her with those hopeful blue eyes, Victoria found herself nodding. "If you're sure I won't be in the way," "You could never be in the way," Christopher said quietly. And the intensity in his voice made her wonder if they were still talking about the vacation that evening. After tucking Lily into bed, Victoria found a cream-colored envelope slipped under her door. Inside was a handwritten note on expensive stationery. "Thank you for agreeing to come. I know this might be complicated, but I'm glad you'll be there." "We both are," was signed simply with Christopher's initials. Victoria pressed the note to her chest, closing her eyes. She was walking into dangerous territory, allowing herself to hope for something that could never be. But as she packed her modest suitcase over the following weeks, choosing her one decent swimsuit and a few sundresses, she couldn't quite extinguish the small flame of possibility flickering in her heart. The private jet touched down on the sun-drenched island of St. Lucia just after noon, and Victoria felt as though she had stepped into a postcard. Turquoise waters stretched endlessly beyond white sand beaches, and palm trees swayed in the warm breeze that carried the scent of hibiscus and salt air. Lily pressed her face against the window, her excitement palpable. "Look at the water. It's so blue. Can we go swimming right away?" Natasha Sterling adjusted her designer sunglasses and examined her manicure with apparent boredom. She had barely acknowledged Victoria during the entire flight, treating her with the casual dismissiveness reserved for hired help. The socialite wore white linen pants and a silk blouse that probably cost more than Victoria earned in 3 months. Christopher gathered their carry-on bags, his expression unreadable. He had been unusually quiet during the journey, responding to Natasha's chatter with monosyllables while occasionally glancing toward where Victoria sat with Lily. A resort representative greeted them on the tarmac, explaining the arrangements. Christopher and Natasha would stay in the main villa, a sprawling paradise with an infinity pool and private beach access. Victoria and Lily would occupy the guest cottage connected by a garden path, close enough for convenience but separate enough to maintain boundaries. "The nanny quarters are quite nice," the representative assured them. "Very comfortable. I'm sure they're adequate," Natasha said dismissively, linking her arm through Christopher's. "Shall we settle in? I'm dying for a massage and some champagne." Victoria caught the flash of irritation that crossed Christopher's face, but he simply nodded. "Victoria, take your time getting settled. We'll meet at the beach around 4. "That sounds perfect," Victoria replied, keeping her voice professional despite the flutter in her stomach. When his eyes lingered on her face, The guest cottage exceeded all expectations. Cream-colored walls opened onto a private terrace surrounded by flowering vines. Lily's room connected through a shared bathroom, decorated in soft corals and blues. Victoria's room was simple but beautiful, with gauzy curtains that billowed in the ocean breeze. "This is like a fairy tale," Lily breathed, twirling in her room. "Can we really stay here for 2 whole weeks?" "We can," Victoria laughed, unpacking their suitcases. "Now how about we get you into that new swimsuit and head down to the beach?" 40 minutes later, Victoria stood before her bathroom mirror, second-guessing every decision. Her swimsuit was a simple navy blue one-piece, practical and modest, yet she felt exposed. Her auburn hair fell in waves past her shoulders, and the Caribbean sun had already kissed her pale skin with warmth. She covered up with a white cotton dress and gathered towels and sunscreen. The beach was nearly deserted in the afternoon heat. Lily immediately began constructing an elaborate sandcastle, while Victoria spread out towels beneath a thatched umbrella. She slipped off her dress and settled onto her towel, trying to relax. "Excuse me?" Victoria looked up to find 2 men standing nearby, both in their early 30s, with the confident bearing of wealth. The taller one had sun-bleached hair and an easy smile. "I'm Owen, and this is my brother Spencer. We couldn't help noticing you're staying at the resort. Are you here alone?" "I'm here with the family I work for," Victoria replied, gesturing toward Lily. "I'm her nanny." Spencer grinned. "Lucky family. That shade of blue really brings out your eyes." Heat crept up Victoria's neck. She wasn't accustomed to male attention, having spent the past 3 years focused entirely on Lily and maintaining professional distance from everyone else. "That's kind of you to say. We're here for another week," Owen continued. "Maybe we could buy you a drink sometime. The Sunset Bar makes incredible mojitos." Before Victoria could formulate a polite refusal, she felt the weight of someone's stare. She turned and found Christopher standing about 30 feet away, frozen mid-step. Natasha walked beside him, talking animatedly about something, but Christopher wasn't listening. His green eyes were locked on Victoria with an intensity that made her skin prickle. His jaw was clenched tight. His hands had curled into fists at his sides. The expression on his face was something Victoria had never witnessed before. Raw emotion flickered there, dark and possessive, before he seemed to catch himself. He turned abruptly and walked in the opposite direction, leaving Natasha calling after him in confusion. "So what do you say?" Spencer pressed. "Tomorrow evening?" Victoria dragged her attention back to the brothers. "I appreciate the invitation, but I'm working. I need to focus on Lily." "She seems pretty independent to me," Owen observed. "Surely you get some time off." "Thank you, but no," Victoria said more firmly. "I hope you enjoy the rest of your vacation." The men exchanged glances before Owen shrugged good-naturedly. "Can't blame us for trying. If you change your mind, we're in Villa 7. After they left, Victoria tried to concentrate on building sandcastles with Lily. But her mind kept returning to Christopher's expression. That look had been possessive, almost jealous. But that made no sense. He had a girlfriend. He was her employer. There were a dozen reasons why he shouldn't care if other men found her attractive. The afternoon stretched into evening. When they returned to the cottage to shower and change for dinner, Victoria found a note slipped under her door. Christopher's handwriting was bold and decisive. "Dinner at 7 in the main restaurant. All 4 of us. Please wear something nice." Victoria's wardrobe was limited. She owned exactly 1 dress suitable for fine dining. Emerald green wrap dress she had bought on sale 2 years ago but rarely had occasion to wear. She styled her hair in soft curls and applied minimal makeup. Just enough to feel presentable. When she and Lily arrived at the restaurant, Christopher and Natasha were already seated at a table overlooking the ocean. Candlelight flickered across white linens, and the sound of waves provided a romantic backdrop. Christopher stood as they approached. Pulling out chairs for both Victoria and Lily, his eyes swept over Victoria's dress, and something flickered in their depths. "You look beautiful," he said quietly. The words hung in the air between them. Natasha's fork clattered against her plate, and her eyes narrowed dangerously. "How thoughtful of you to notice the help, darling." "Victoria isn't help," Christopher said coldly. "She's Lily's nanny, and an important part of our lives. Right. Lily beamed. Victoria always looks pretty. Right, Daddy? Yes, Christopher replied, his gaze still fixed on Victoria. She does. The tension at the table was thick enough to cut with a knife. Natasha ordered an expensive bottle of wine and downed her first glass quickly. She dominated the conversation, discussing fashion shows and charity galas, dropping names of celebrities and socialites. Of course, when you move in these circles, you learn to recognize quality, Natasha said pointedly, glancing at Victoria's dress. Some people simply don't have the breeding to understand true elegance. Victoria felt the barb but kept her expression neutral. She had grown up in foster care, moving from home to home, never quite belonging anywhere. She had worked her way through community college while juggling 3 part-time jobs. Everything she had earned through determination and sacrifice. Victoria has more grace and elegance than anyone I've ever met, Christopher said, his voice dangerously quiet. And she achieved it without relying on family money or social connections. Natasha's face flushed crimson. Are you seriously defending her over me? I'm defending basic human decency. Lily, sensing the tension, began fidgeting with her napkin. Victoria gently touched the child's hand under the table, offering silent comfort. Perhaps we should order, Victoria suggested softly. Lily loves the chocolate dessert they mentioned. Of course she does, Natasha muttered. Children are so predictable, and it's fortunate you don't have any, Christopher said icily. The remainder of the meal passed in uncomfortable silence. Victoria focused entirely on Lily, cutting her food and quietly encouraging her to try new things. She could feel Christopher watching them, his expression troubled. When dinner finally ended, Victoria gratefully escaped with Lily back to their cottage. She helped the little girl into pajamas and read her favorite story about a brave princess and a dragon. Victoria? Lily asked as she snuggled under the covers. Do you think Daddy loves Natasha? The question caught Victoria off guard. Why do you ask, sweetheart? Because he doesn't smile at her. Not really. When he looks at you, his eyes get all soft and happy. But with her, he just looks tired. Victoria's heart hammered. Adults are complicated, Lily. Sometimes people care about each other in different ways. Mommy used to say that love should make you feel like sunshine, Lily said thoughtfully. Natasha doesn't make Daddy feel like sunshine. But maybe you could? Lily, I know you love him, the child interrupted with startling certainty. I can tell. And I think he loves you too. He just doesn't know it yet. Victoria had no response. She kissed Lily's forehead and retreated to her own room, her mind spinning. She stepped out onto the terrace, needing the cool night air to clear her thoughts. Victoria, she gasped and spun around. Christopher stood at the edge of her terrace, still dressed in his dinner clothes, but with his jacket removed and sleeves rolled up. In the moonlight, he looked younger, more vulnerable. Mr. Dalton, is something wrong? Does Lily need me? Lily's fine. I checked through the connecting door. He moved closer, and Victoria could see the conflict warring in his expression. I came to apologize. For Natasha? For putting you in that situation? You don't need to apologize for your girlfriend. She's not, Christopher stopped, running a hand through his hair in frustration. I don't know what she is anymore. Maybe I never did. Victoria's breath caught. I don't think we should be having this conversation. Probably not, he agreed, stepping onto the terrace. But I need to say this anyway. Those men on the beach today, they saw what I've been trying not to see for 3 years. Christopher, you're extraordinary, Victoria. The way you love Lily. The way you've brought warmth back into our home. The way you make everything feel less heavy. I watch you and I wonder how I ever functioned before you came into our lives. Victoria's heart pounded so hard she thought it might burst. You're with Natasha. This isn't appropriate. Nothing about how I feel is appropriate, Christopher said roughly. You work for me. You're younger than me. You're supposed to be off limits. But standing there tonight, watching you in that green dress, listening to you comfort my daughter, I realized something. He was close now. Close enough that she could see the gold flecks in his green eyes. Close enough to feel the heat radiating from his body. What did you realize? Victoria whispered. That I've been lying to myself for a very long time. The words hung between them like suspended raindrops, heavy with meaning and consequence. Victoria's breath came in shallow gasps as Christopher stood before her, moonlight casting shadows across his angular features. The ocean whispered in the distance, a soundtrack to the moment that would change everything. "You should go," Victoria managed, though every fiber of her being screamed for him to stay. "Natasha will be wondering where you are." "Natasha passed out an hour ago with an empty wine bottle on the nightstand," Christopher said wearily. "This has been building for months. I kept telling myself I could make it work, that Lily needed stability, that choosing someone appropriate was the responsible thing to do. But appropriate doesn't mean right." Victoria wrapped her arms around herself, trying to maintain some semblance of control. "What are you saying?" Christopher moved closer, and she could smell his cologne mixed with sea salt and something uniquely him. "I'm saying that for 3 years I've watched you bring light into every corner of my life. I've listened to you sing to Lily when you think no one can hear. I've seen you reading in the library on your evenings off, completely absorbed in whatever world the book offers. I've noticed how you always save the chocolate chip cookies for last because they're your favorite. You've been watching me?" Victoria's voice came out breathless. "Every single day," Christopher admitted, his voice rough with emotion. "Trying desperately to ignore what I was feeling, telling myself it was gratitude or respect or anything other than what it actually was. And what was it?" Victoria knew she should stop this conversation, should retreat to safety. But she couldn't move. Christopher reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and gently tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. His fingers lingered against her cheek, and Victoria felt electricity shoot through her entire body. "Love," he said simply. "I'm in love with you, Victoria Hayes. I have been for longer than I care to admit. And watching those men flirt with you today, seeing you smile at them, I realized I can't keep pretending anymore." Tears spilled down Victoria's cheeks before she could stop them. "This is impossible. I work for you. There are rules about this kind of thing. And Lily, what about Lily? If this goes wrong, I'd have to leave, and she's already lost so much." "Lily adores you," Christopher said softly. "She told me tonight that you make our house feel like a home again. She said her mother would have loved you." The mention of Amanda made Victoria step back. "Your wife has only been gone for years. Maybe you're just lonely. Maybe I'm just convenient because I'm always there." Pain flashed across Christopher's face. "Don't diminish what I feel. Amanda was my world, and losing her nearly destroyed me. For 2 years, I was just going through the motions, barely holding myself together for Lily's sake. Then you walked into our lives, and slowly, day by day, I remembered what it felt like to want to come home, to look forward to dinner conversations, to laugh at silly jokes, and feel hope for the future. I loved Amanda," Christopher continued, his voice thick with emotion. "I'll always love her. But she's gone, and I have to believe she'd want me to be happy again. More importantly, she'd want Lily to grow up in a home filled with love, not obligation." Victoria wiped at her tears. "What about Natasha? You can't just end an 8-month relationship because of feelings that might not even be real." "They're real," Christopher said with certainty. "And things with Natasha have been over for a while. We've both been going through the motions, staying together because it was easier than admitting failure. She doesn't love me either. She loves what I represent: security, status, access to certain social circles. Tomorrow morning, I'm going to end things properly." "And then what?" Victoria asked, her voice small. "Even if you're single, I still work for you. People will talk. They'll say terrible things. Let them talk," Christopher said fiercely. "I've spent 3 years caring what people think, doing what's expected, following all the rules. Where has it gotten me? Lonely dinners with a woman who treats my daughter like an inconvenience, and a household that feels more like a museum than a home." He took both of Victoria's hands in his, and she felt the warmth of his touch spread through her entire body. "I'm not asking you to make any decisions tonight. I know this is overwhelming, but I needed you to know the truth. I needed you to understand that when I look at you, I don't see an employee. I see the woman who's brought joy back into my life. I see someone brave and kind and beautiful, inside and out." Victoria looked up at him, searching his face for any sign of doubt or hesitation. she found only raw honesty and something that made her heart soar. Hope. "I've loved you since the first month I worked for you," Victoria confessed, the words tumbling out now that the dam had broken. "I told myself it was wrong, that I needed to maintain professional boundaries. I tried so hard not to care when you started seeing Natasha. But every time you walked into a room, my heart would skip. Every time you smiled at Lily, I'd fall a little more. I've spent 3 years loving you from a distance, convinced it was hopeless." Christopher's eyes blazed with emotion. He cupped her face gently in his hands, his thumbs brushing away her tears. "It's not hopeless. Not anymore." "Kiss me," Victoria whispered, abandoning caution for the first time in her careful, controlled life. Christopher lowered his head slowly, giving her every opportunity to change her mind. When their lips finally met, Victoria felt the world tilt on its axis. The kiss was gentle at first, tentative and sweet, but quickly deepened into something that stole her breath and made her knees weak. His arms wrapped around her waist, pulling her close. She wound her fingers through his hair. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Christopher rested his forehead against hers. "I should go before I do something that makes leaving impossible," Stay, Victoria said, surprising herself. "Just for a little while. We can sit on the terrace and talk. I'm not ready for you to go yet." They settled onto the cushioned terrace furniture, and Christopher kept his arm around her shoulders while Victoria curled against his side. It felt natural, as though they'd been doing this for years. They talked about everything. Christopher's childhood dreams of being an architect before a business called, Victoria's years in foster care and her determination to give Lily the stability she'd never had, their favorite books, their deepest fears. "I was terrified you'd never see me as anything but the nanny," Victoria admitted as stars wheeled overhead. "I was terrified you'd quit if you knew how I felt," Christopher countered. "I nearly fired myself mentally a dozen times for having inappropriate thoughts about an employee." Victoria laughed, the sound light and free. "What kind of inappropriate thoughts?" "Wondering what your hair would feel like without that ponytail you always wear. Imagining what you looked like when you smiled at something meant just for you, not because you were being polite. Daydreaming about taking you to dinner somewhere we could just be two people getting to know each other without the weight of employer and employee between us. We could do that now," Victoria said softly. "Once you talk to Natasha, once we figure out how to navigate this properly." "We will," Christopher promised. "I don't care how long it takes or what we have to do to make this work. You're worth it." They sat together until the sky began to lighten with dawn, neither wanting the night to end. Finally, reluctantly, Christopher stood and pressed a lingering kiss to Victoria's forehead. "Get some rest. This afternoon, after I've spoken with Natasha, we'll figure out the next steps together." Victoria watched him walk back toward the main villa, her heart fuller than she'd ever thought possible. She slipped into bed just as the sun painted the sky pink and gold. Falling asleep with a smile on her face, she woke to Lily bouncing on her bed, sunlight streaming through the windows. "Victoria, wake up. Daddy says we're having a special breakfast, and you have to come." Victoria dressed quickly, her stomach fluttering with nerves and anticipation. When they reached the main villa's terrace, she found Christopher alone at a table laden with fresh fruit, pastries, and tropical flowers. "Where's Natasha?" Lily asked innocently. "Miss Sterling decided to return home early," Christopher said carefully. "She wasn't enjoying the vacation as much as she'd hoped." Victoria met his eyes across the table and saw the confirmation there. He'd done it. He'd ended things with Natasha, so it's just us? Lily asked, her face lighting up with pure joy. "Like a real family vacation?" Christopher reached across the table and took Victoria's hand right in front of his daughter. "Yes, Princess. Just us. If that's okay with Victoria?" Victoria felt tears prick her eyes again, but these were tears of happiness. "That's more than okay." Lily looked between them, and understanding dawned on her young face. A smile spread across her features, the biggest, brightest smile Victoria had ever seen. "Does this mean Victoria can be my new mommy someday?" "Lily," Christopher started, but Victoria squeezed his hand. "Someday," Victoria said gently, "if your daddy and I figure out how to do this right, but no matter what happens, I'll always be here for you. That's a promise." "Ah, I knew it." Lily declared triumphantly. "I knew you loved each other. I could tell." The rest of the vacation passed in a blur of perfect moments. They spent days on the beach, building elaborate sandcastles and splashing in the waves. They explored local markets, tasting exotic fruits, and buying handmade treasures. In the evenings, after Lily was asleep, Christopher and Victoria would sit on the terrace, talking and dreaming about the future. On their last night, Christopher took Victoria's hand as they watched the sunset paint the sky in brilliant shades of orange and pink. "When we get home, I'm going to do this properly. I'll speak with the household staff. Make sure everyone understands that our relationship is genuine and consensual. We'll take things slowly for Lily's sake. But I want everyone to know that you're not my employee anymore. You're the woman I love. I'll need to find another job," Victoria said practically. "I can't be your girlfriend and Lily's nanny. That crosses too many lines." "Actually," Christopher said, a smile playing at his lips, "I've been thinking about that. My company needs someone to head up our new charitable foundation. Someone who understands what it's like to struggle, who has empathy and vision. Someone who could make a real difference in children's lives." Victoria's eyes widened. "Christopher, I barely finished community college." "I'm not qualified. You're the most qualified person I know," Christopher interrupted. "You have real-world experience, genuine compassion, and the kind of insight that can't be taught in business school. Think about it. We could help kids aging out of foster care, provide resources for single parents, fund programs that actually make a difference." The idea sparked something inside Victoria, a sense of purpose beyond what she'd ever imagined. "I'd still want to be involved in Lily's life. You'll be involved in every aspect of our lives," Christopher promised, "just in a different capacity. As my partner. As someone I want to build a future with." 3 months later, Victoria stood in the Dalton mansion's grand foyer, but everything had changed. Her belongings had been moved from the staff wing to the guest suite, though she spent most nights in Christopher's room, wrapped in his arms. She wore professional clothes now for her new position at the foundation, her hair styled confidently. Margaret bustled past with fresh flowers, pausing to squeeze Victoria's shoulder. "You look happy, dear." "Truly happy?" "I am," Victoria admitted, "more than I ever thought possible." Lily came running down the stairs, no longer calling Victoria by her first name alone, but using a new term that made Victoria's heart soar every single time. "Victoria, Mom, can we go to the park?" "Daddy said yes, if you say yes." Christopher appeared behind his daughter, loosening his tie after a long day at the office. His eyes found Victoria's across the foyer, and the love shining there took her breath away, even after months together. "What do you say?" he asked, crossing to her and pulling her into his arms. "Family outing to the park?" Victoria looked around at this life she'd never dared to dream of. The man who loved her despite all the obstacles. The child who'd claimed her heart from day one. The home that had transformed from a place of employment to a place of belonging. "Yes," she said simply, kissing Christopher softly while Lily giggled beside them. "Always yes." Because sometimes the quiet girl who'd spent her whole life on the outside looking in got to step through the door into her own fairy tale. Sometimes love didn't follow the rules or make logical sense. Sometimes it just happened, transforming everything in its wake. And as they walked to the park together, hands linked in laughter filling the air, Victoria knew with absolute certainty that this was just the beginning of their beautiful, imperfect, perfectly real story. The end.